Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. What if Naruto was a genius with god-level chakra control? Part 1. The assignment board in front of the academy was a jangling clatter of parchment and possibility. Names were written and crossed out, ink seals stamped, and murmurs rose like wind through bamboo. For most kids, this was the day they imagined in secret. Who would they train under? Who would they fight beside? For Naruto Uzumaki it was another bright, beating drum in his chest. He couldn't stop grinning. He still had the new headband warm against his forehead, the metal plate catching stray sunlight as he pushed through the crowd. People stepped aside, some with that practiced, chilly civility the adults reserved for him, others with a faint, reluctant respect that only came from watching skill. Naruto only noticed the latter. He walked like someone who had already earned something, because he had. The board was chaos. Teams forming into 3s and 4s, Jonin names scrawled across the top of each grouping. Naruto scanned until a familiar handwriting met his eyes. Kakashi Hitaki, 21. There was no pomp, no fanfare, just a neat column with 3 empty slots under the Jonin's name. Naruto's grin stretched wider. Kakashi Hitaki. He'd heard the stories in snatches. The young prodigy, the man with the mask, the one who'd earned his reputation with a cool head and a blade's accuracy. Uzumaki, a voice said behind him. Iruka, clipboard in hand, faintly worried but trying not to show it. You know he's not easy, right? Naruto waggled his fingers. I know, I'll be fine, Iruka-sensei. He must be strong if he's Kakashi, right? Iruka looked at Kakashi's name, then at Naruto's steady face. You better listen, and don't get reckless. I won't, Naruto said, earnest. Then he bounded forward like a ball of motion and pressed his palm to the empty slot beneath Kakashi's name. 2 older students were already there, looking like they'd been plucked from the same class but years apart in experience and attitude. They turned, eyebrows lifting when they saw who had joined them. The first, tall, with neat hair and a book tucked under his arm, regarded Naruto with cautious curiosity. He was all angles and measured breath, the sort of boy who liked diagrams on paper more than the chaos of a spar. Teammate A. You're young, he said, precisely. The second was louder. Broad-shouldered, cheeks a little scraped as if he'd been practicing jumps that morning, grin already forming into a challenge. He sneered just enough to cover his uncertainty. Teammate B. 7. That's a joke. This is a genin team, not a babysitting gig. Naruto blinked, then laughed. I'm not a joke. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. I'll make you look good. He stuck out a hand as if offering friendship. And mischief. The gruff boy hesitated a second, then clasped it with a slap that hurt a little and pleased him a lot. The cautious boy only watched, expression folding into something like calculation. A soft chuckle cut between them. Kakashi stepped forward from the shade of a cedar, mask covering everything but his one visible eye and the slow tilt of his posture. He looked hardly older than 20, but his gaze carried the kind of long exercised patience that belonged to men who had already made hard decisions. You 3, Kakashi said, voice low and even. He tapped his scroll once as if to measure them. I'm Kakashi. We run drills, we run missions, and we learn to not get idiots killed. Got it? Yes, sir. Naruto's answer came before the others, a bright, serious declaration that filled the space. The taller boy gave a small nod. The brash one rolled his eyes but didn't voice dissent. Kakashi's eye flicked to Naruto's forehead protector, then to the boy's stance, easy, unforced. He tucked a hand into his vest, fingertips finding the smoothness of a kunai's hilt absent-mindedly. There was something in the way Naruto breathed, a steady economy to his movements that suggested more than raw energy. The Jonin's inspection tightened almost imperceptibly. You'd better be able to keep up, Kakashi murmured. Age doesn't matter out here, only decisions and timing. Naruto's grin never faltered. I'll do more than keep up. He bounced on the balls of his feet, eyes bright and untroubled. We'll be the best team ever. Kakashi's mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite anything, but the corner of his eye softened. He had seen many bright things. Most burned out after a while. This boy's light was different, steady around the edges. As Kakashi turned toward the training ground to begin the first drills, his gaze lingered. He could already feel the shape of the team forming. 2 older boys tempered by one impossibly young spark. Kakashi's mind catalogued their strengths and gaps in a single breath. At the back of that list, almost as an afterthought, he noted Naruto's chakra signature, vast, steady, almost obscene for a child. He filed that away like a curious fact. Then, with his usual calm, he led them forward. The field waited. The test would begin. The training ground stretched out in front of them, a clearing ringed by tall trees that whispered in the afternoon breeze. Wooden targets stood at uneven distances, their centers scarred from countless kunai. Flat stones dotted the earth near a shallow stream, places meant for balance drills. The smell of trampled grass and metal shavings lingered in the air, a place made for shinobi, not children. Kakashi stopped in the middle of the field, hands buried in his pockets, posture loose but gaze sharp. His single eye swept across his 3 new students. "Before I decide what to do with you," he said, voice calm, "I want to see what you can do with yourselves." The brash boy, teammate B, grinned, twirling a kunai with a flourish that was more bravado than skill. "Finally. Been waiting to show off." The cautious one, teammate A, adjusted the strap of his pouch and swallowed hard, muttering something under his breath about proper form. Naruto bounced on his heels, practically vibrating. "So, test time, right? I'm ready." Kakashi tilted his head slightly. "We'll start simple. Accuracy test. 5 kunai, center of the target." They lined up. Teammate B went first, hurling his weapons with more strength and control. 2 kunai hit the target, 1 clipped the outer ring, and the last 2 sank into the dirt well short of the mark. He scowled, pretending it didn't matter. Teammate A followed, taking his time, each throw deliberate. 3 kunai landed near the center, 2 drifted off. Not terrible, not excellent. Then Naruto stepped forward. He didn't pause, didn't frown. He just drew, threw, and in 5 quick motions, each kunai buried itself dead center. Not clustered around it, through it. Wood cracked under the strain. Silence followed. Teammate B's mouth twisted. Teammate A blinked, as if recalculating. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck, laughing. "Guess I got lucky." Kakashi said nothing, but his eye narrowed slightly. Luck didn't leave a pattern like that. Next, Kakashi continued. "Control, leaf exercise." He handed each of them a single green leaf plucked from a nearby branch. "Keep it stuck to your forehead with chakra, no hands." The 2 older boys pressed their leaves down and closed their eyes, concentrating. Teammate B's leaf fell almost instantly, and he cursed under his breath. Teammate A lasted nearly a minute before his chakra faltered and the leaf slipped sideways. Naruto placed the leaf on his forehead, then without hesitation added 1 to each palm. He held all 3 steady while turning to watch his teammates with a broad grin. "Is this good enough?" he asked cheerfully. The leaves didn't twitch. Teammate B muttered something dark. Teammate A stared. Kakashi's gaze sharpened again. Children with Naruto's chakra reserves usually struggled with fine control, too much spilling over, too little precision. Yet here the boy was, splitting it 3 ways as if it were effortless. "Good," Kakashi said simply. His tone gave away nothing. "Last. Sparring. 1 at a time." Teammate B volunteered instantly, eager to prove himself. He charged at Naruto, swinging fists clumsily. Naruto moved smoothly, sliding around the attacks, redirecting with simple steps and nudges. His counters were sharp enough to sting but never cruel. Within a minute, Teammate B was flat on his back, panting and red-faced. Teammate A hesitated but stepped forward when Naruto offered an encouraging grin. The cautious boy fought with better form, but his strikes lacked confidence. Naruto met him evenly, adjusting his pace to draw him out, even calling small tips mid-spar. "Shift your weight, yeah, like that." In the end, Naruto tapped his shoulder lightly, signaling victory without humiliation. Both teammates stood off to the side afterward, catching their breath. Their glances were conflicted, resentment tangled with reluctant acknowledgement. Naruto just bounced in place, hands on his hips. "That was fun, you guys are good." Neither believed him, but something in his tone softened the sting. Kakashi stepped forward at last, eye unreadable. "That will do." He paused, considering. "Your strengths are obvious, and your weaknesses are, also obvious. But none of that matters without teamwork. Remember that." Naruto tilted his head. "So, are we doing a team thing next?" "Of course." Kakashi's voice was smooth, quiet. "I didn't take this squad to watch you throw kunai. The real test comes now." He gestured toward the far side of the training ground, where a small scroll lay tied to a post. "Your task. Defend that scroll from me. Work together. If I take it, you fail." The 2 older boys tensed, already whispering doubts. Naruto just grinned, eyes gleaming with anticipation. Finally, Kakashi studied him, just for a moment. The boy wasn't afraid, not hesitant, not even reckless. Just ready. The Jonin's lips curved faintly beneath his mask. This was going to be interesting. The scroll tied to the post fluttered faintly in the breeze, its red cord snapping like a warning. It looked ordinary, but Kakashi's voice made it sharp as steel. "That's your mission," he said. "Defend the scroll from me for 30 minutes, If I take it, you fail. One of the older boys, thin, neat-haired, and pale, shifted uneasily. 30 minutes, against you? That's impossible. The other, broad-shouldered with scuffed knuckles, snorted, spinning his kunai with reckless bravado. Ha! He's just trying to scare us. I bet I can stall him longer than either of you. Kakashi's visible eye curved in that lazy arc that was never quite a smile. You catch on quick. The neat one frowned, anxious. We're not supposed to be fighting Jonin. This isn't. Oi, teammate A, Naruto cut in with a grin, hands on his hips. Don't sweat it, we've got this. Both older boys blinked at him. Teammate A, the nervous one repeated. Naruto tilted his head innocently. Well, yeah. I don't know your names yet, so I had to call you something, right? The broad one barked a laugh. You've been training with us all morning and you still don't know who we are. Naruto scratched the back of his head sheepishly. Guess I got too excited. So, what are your names? The pale boy pinched the bridge of his nose, muttering, unbelievable. Then, reluctantly, Renji Takeda. The broad-shouldered one puffed his chest. Daichi Morita. Naruto's grin stretched wide. Renji and Daichi. Got it, he punched the air. Nice to meet ya, teammates. Daichi scowled. This isn't a game, kid. We're up against Kakashi Hitaki. Everyone knows who he is. We don't stand a chance. Naruto leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Who cares if he's Kakashi? We don't need to beat him. We just need to stop him. Big difference. Renji frowned, uncertain. And how do you propose we do that? Easy. Naruto crouched and started scratching lines into the dirt with his finger. He marked the scroll at the center, then drew arrows toward it. He's fast, right? So he'll go for the scroll quick. That means you, teammate A. Renji twitched. It's Renji. Right, Renji. Naruto grinned. You stay by the scroll. You're steady. Hold the line, make him work for it. And you. He jabbed at Daichi. You're loud and fast. Make him look your way, pull his attention off the scroll. Loud? Daichi snapped. Yeah, that's a compliment, Naruto said brightly. And me? I'll hit him with something he can't ignore. Renji blinked at him. Naruto didn't sound like a kid pretending to be clever. He sounded like someone who'd done this before. Like a seasoned shinobi who had seen fights unfold. You talk like a chunin, Renji said carefully. Naruto shook his head, grin undimmed. Nope. I just pay attention. Trust me, we can do this if we stick together. Daichi made a noise in his throat, still skeptical, but his bravado had dimmed. Renji hesitated, then gave a reluctant nod. Naruto's certainty was like a spark. It caught, just enough to light them both. Time's up, Kakashi's voice called from across the field. The Jonin hadn't moved from his lazy perch against a tree, but the weight of his gaze pressed down like iron. Defend your scroll. Renji moved stiffly to stand in front of the post, kunai clenched in nervous hands. Daichi crouched in the underbrush, his scowl covering the tension in his shoulders. Naruto strode forward to the front, headband gleaming, his stance loose but balanced, eyes fixed on Kakashi. Kakashi's gaze lingered on him, the boy's grin steady and unshaken. Not afraid, he murmured, not reckless, just ready. Then he vanished. The test began. The instant Kakashi vanished, the training ground fell silent. Leaves stirred, branches creaked, but there was no sign of him. Where? Renji whispered, eyes darting across the clearing. Naruto crouched, scanning the tree line with a focus that seemed out of place on his round face. Don't panic. He's fast, but he's still one guy. Eyes up. Listen. Daichi snorted from the brush. You talk like you know what you're doing. Naruto grinned without looking back. I do. The words weren't boastful. They were matter of fact, confident in a way that made both older boys stiffen. Then Kakashi struck. A blur of gray and steel dropped from above, kunai glinting. Renji yelped, fumbling his weapon up to block, but Kakashi didn't press the strike. He landed lightly in front of the post, hand already reaching. Now, Naruto barked. Renji moved without thinking, stabbing forward. His kunai met only air as Kakashi sidestepped easily, but the moment of delay was enough. Daichi burst from the underbrush with a roar, swinging wide and reckless. Kakashi ducked under the strike, flowing like water. His hand flicked up, tapping Daichi's forehead protector with 2 fingers. Dead. Daichi growled, stumbling back. TCH, don't waste your anger, Naruto shouted. His eyes tracked Kakashi, movements sharp, calculating. Renji, keep the scroll covered. Daichi, circle wide, make him split his focus. Don't go head on. Daichi's teeth clenched, but he obeyed, darting back into the brush. Renji steadied himself in front of the post, knuckles white around his kunai. Kakashi's eye curved faintly. You're loud, but organized, not bad. He flickered, vanishing in a blur. Renji gasped as Kakashi reappeared behind him, hand reaching for the scroll. Naruto was already there. He slid between them, intercepting with a sharp kick that forced Kakashi to pivot aside. The impact cracked like wood snapping. Naruto landed light, kunai drawn, stance solid. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. His movements had been fast, deceptive, the kind of thing even trained Chunin struggled to follow, yet this boy had read him. You're not supposed to see that coming, Kakashi murmured. Naruto grinned. You're not supposed to be that predictable. For the first time, Kakashi's eyes sharpened. He moved again, faster, pressing Naruto with a series of strikes. Kunai met kunai, steel sparking. Naruto bent, ducked, wove, his small body slipping just out of reach. Every movement was efficient, no wasted energy, no panic. He didn't look like a child improvising. He looked like someone who had done this before. Renji stared, stunned. He's fighting like an adult. Daichi growled from the brush, throwing shuriken to force Kakashi to turn. The Jonin tilted his head. The weapons whistled past harmlessly. Naruto seized the opening. He leapt back, hands blurring through seals. Free, fast and crisp. Kakashi's eye widened a fraction. So few? Naruto inhaled sharply. Chakra compressed in his lungs, refined and sharpened with delicate control. Futon. Sabama Ryuden. The clearing cracked with sound. Bang. 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 Invisible bullets screamed through the air, tearing the ground in neat holes, splintering bark from tree trunks. One shot blasted a chunk of earth where Kakashi had stood a heartbeat earlier. Kakashi flickered sideways, cloak snapping. Another bullet sliced past, gouging the bark behind him. Bang bang bang. Each shot carried lethal intent. A single hit would have punched clean through flesh and bone. Blocking was impossible. Steel would crumble. Dodging was the only option. Renji flinched at the sound, eyes wide. That could kill someone. Daichi's jaw dropped. What the hell kind of jutsu is that? Naruto's grin was feral, sweat beading on his brow as he fired in controlled bursts. The bullets cracked like rifle fire, each one precise, measured, not a single wasted shot. Kakashi wove between them, his movements sharp, economical, serious now. His lazy air was gone. The boy was forcing him to try. A bullet grazed his vest, punching a clean hole through the reinforced flak. Kakashi froze mid-step, glancing down at the neat tear. His eye narrowed. That would have gone through a man's chest like paper. Naruto kept firing, rhythm steady. He wasn't throwing chakra around wildly. He was balancing it, metering the pressure perfectly each time. For a boy with monstrous reserves, this kind of restraint was unheard of. Finally, Kakashi closed the distance in a flicker, appearing behind Naruto. 2 fingers tapped the boy's shoulder. Dead. The last bullet whistled harmlessly into the woods, punching a hole clean through a tree. Silence. Renji's chest heaved. Daichi's eyes were still wide. Naruto panted lightly, sweat streaking his temple. Then he laughed, bright and fearless. Hey. Almost had you. Kakashi stepped back, eye unreadable. Almost. His gaze lingered on the boy, the neat hole in his vest a silent reminder. That jutsu of yours. Naruto beamed. Cool, right? Renji muttered, dazed. Cool? It's lethal. Daichi barked a laugh, shaking his head. Kid's insane. But both of them looked at Naruto differently now, less scorn, more awe. Naruto didn't notice. He just stretched, grinning as if he hadn't nearly torn the clearing apart. So, did we pass? Kakashi didn't answer right away. He studied the boy's grin, the steadiness in his stance, the way his teammates unconsciously turned toward him now. You didn't win, Kakashi said finally, but you didn't need to. You worked as a team, and that's what mattered. Naruto pumped a fist in the air. Told you we could do it. Renji exhaled slowly, tension bleeding out of his shoulders. Daichi gave a grudging nod. Kakashi's eyes softened as he turned away. Inside, though, his thoughts churned. At 7, he's already innovating lethal jutsu. Already commanding a team. Already forcing me to dodge seriously. Most prodigies are solitary blades. This one, he wants to be a shield. A leader. His hand brushed the neat hole in his vest again. If he lives long enough, he won't just surpass me, he'll surpass everyone. The training field was quiet again, save for the rustle of leaves and the faint hiss of wind through the trees where Naruto's jutsu had carved its path. The scroll still sat tied to its post, untouched. Renji lowered his kunai with trembling fingers. His pale face was damp with sweat, his chest rising and falling in sharp pulls. Daichi emerged from the brush, scowl plastered across his face, but his wide eyes betrayed the shock he still hadn't shaken. Naruto stood in the middle of it all, bent slightly with exertion but grinning ear to ear, as if he hadn't just fired off a technique that could tear through a man like paper. "See?" Naruto said, hands on his hips, "we did great." Renji stared at him. "Great? He killed all three of us, twice." Daichi jabbed a thumb at Naruto. "And you, what the hell was that? That wind thing? Those bullets could have gone straight through me?" Naruto laughed, not unkindly. "That's why I didn't fire at you, dummy. Besides, you guys covered me so I could use it. Renji, if you hadn't stood your ground in front of the scroll, Kakashi-sensei would have had it before I finished the first seal. And Daichi," he grinned wide, "you're so loud he actually had to look at you. That bought me time." Daichi blinked. "You're saying I helped?" "Of course," Naruto said, utterly sincere. "I couldn't do it alone. No way. That's why we're a team, right?" Renji's mouth opened, then closed again. He'd expected mockery, dismissal, arrogance, anything but this easy, earnest praise. His hands loosened around his weapon. Daichi scratched the back of his head, trying and failing to hide the faint curl of his lips. HMPH. Guess being loud has its uses. Naruto punched his shoulder lightly. "Exactly, you distracted a Jonin. That's awesome." The older boy's cheeks reddened slightly. He shoved Naruto back with a grumble, but the bite was gone from his voice. Kakashi watched from his lean against a tree, his hands buried in his pockets, single eye hooded. He'd seen prodigies before, sharp, cold, distant. Itachi or even himself at that age. Talented children who walked alone, driven by their skill into solitude. But this boy was different. Naruto wasn't interested in standing above the others. He pulled them up with him, whether they wanted it or not. Renji and Daichi weren't just students fumbling through drills anymore. In the space of an hour, he had turned them into something like a squad. "All right," Kakashi said at last, his voice smooth but carrying. "Enough sulking. You didn't win, but you didn't lose either. You showed teamwork. That matters more than anything else." Renji straightened, surprised by the rare note of approval. Daichi smirked, trying to look unimpressed but failing. Naruto just beamed, punching the air. "Knew it." Kakashi pushed off the tree, his gaze resting on the boy's broad grin and his two older teammates standing a little taller than before. His eyes softened. "Minato-sensei, your son is different. He doesn't just shine. He makes others shine with him." "Dismissed," Kakashi said, turning toward the village. "Go get some food. You'll need it." Renji and Daichi shuffled after him, still murmuring between themselves. Naruto lingered for a moment, looking back at the post where the scroll still fluttered untouched. He clenched his small fist, determination etched across his young face. "Next time," he muttered, eyes glinting, "we'll really get him." Then he jogged off to join his teammates, his laughter echoing through the clearing. The Hokage's office smelled faintly of tobacco smoke and ink. Scrolls lay stacked on one side of the desk, mission reports on the other. Hiruzen Sarutobi leaned back in his chair, pipe in hand, his gaze shifting from paperwork to the young Jonin standing before him. Kakashi Hitaki's expression was as unreadable as ever, half hidden behind his mask, but his stance carried none of its usual laziness. "So," Hiruzen prompted, voice calm but expectant, "how did they perform?" Kakashi's single eye flickered in faint amusement. "As expected, two of them are average. Decent foundation, shaky under pressure. Nothing unusual for fresh genin." Hiruzen exhaled a thin stream of smoke, and the third? For a moment, Kakashi didn't answer. His hand brushed the hole neatly torn in the chest of his vest, the fabric burned clean through. "Uzumaki Naruto," he said finally, voice even, 7 years old, already beyond the word prodigy. Hiruzen's brow lifted, but he stayed silent, letting Kakashi continue. "He reads the battlefield like someone with years of experience. Gave orders without hesitation. His plan was simple but effective. He turned 2 panicked rookies into a functioning squad in less than 5 minutes. They actually believed him. Trusted him. I can't name another child who could have pulled that off." Hiruzen tapped ash from his pipe. "And his combat ability?" Kakashi's gaze darkened slightly. "Monstrous. His chakra reserves already outstrip mine. His control is precise enough to perform delicate tasks with frightening consistency." And then, he hesitated, as if choosing his words. "He unveiled a jutsu I've never seen before. Wind nature. 3 seals. He compressed his chakra into high-pressure projectiles and fired them in volleys. Invisible until impact. Each one would punch straight through a human body. Hiruzen's eyes narrowed. Self-created? Kakashi nodded. No doubt. I've seen Jonin spend years crafting new techniques. Naruto has one before his 8th birthday. He touched the hole in his vest again. I was forced to dodge seriously. That hasn't happened in years. Silence stretched. Smoke curled lazily between them. At last, Hiruzen spoke, his voice low. What did you see in him, Kakashi? Kakashi's eyes softened. Most prodigies are solitary blades. They sharpen themselves, cut everything around them, and leave only distance in their wake. Naruto isn't like that. He isn't interested in standing above others. He lifts them. Even when they resent him, even when they doubt him, he pulls them into his orbit. He makes them stronger just by being there. Hiruzen's gaze drifted to the wide window overlooking the village. Below, the rooftops glowed under the late sun, shadows stretching long. Somewhere down there, a boy with a blinding grin was laughing with teammates twice his age. He has his father's brilliance, Kakashi murmured, almost to himself, and his mother's fire. But more than that, he has something of his own. If he lives long enough, he'll be a game changer. No doubt in my mind. Hiruzen's lips curved into a small, wistful smile. Then let us make sure he lives long enough. Kakashi bowed his head. Yes, Lord Hokage. As the Jonin departed in silence, Hiruzen leaned back, eyes heavy with memory. He saw Minato's calm resolve, Kushina's fierce laughter, and in the middle of it, Naruto's grin blazing like a torch. Light, brighter than any before. And, Hiruzen thought grimly, light always drew shadows. Morning sunlight spilled over Konoha's rooftops, golden and warm, as Team Kakashi trudged through the village streets. Their headbands gleamed, but the looks on Renji and Daichi's faces were anything but proud. Another cat, Daichi grumbled, kicking at a loose pebble. Third time this week. We're shinobi, not dog catchers. Renji adjusted the strap of his pouch, expression taut. It's not that simple. Missions are ranked for a reason. We have to prove reliability before they trust us with more serious work. Reliability. Daichi barked a laugh. I didn't sign up to polish floors or chase strays. I want real combat. Bandits. Thieves. Something with a blade in my hand. Naruto, walking ahead of them, turned back with a wide grin. Then chase harder, every mission's training if you think about it. Renji gave him a puzzled look. Training? To chase a house cat? Yeah. Naruto said brightly. Chakra control, reflexes, stamina. You think a cat's easier to catch than a bandit? At least bandits run straight. Cats zigzag, climb, bite, way better practice. Daichi stared, then muttered, you're insane. But there was no real heat behind it. By the time they reached the district where the wayward feline was last spotted, Naruto had already rolled up his sleeves. He darted between alleys and fences like lightning, scaling walls with practiced ease. Renji and Daichi gave chase, but Naruto was everywhere at once. Bounding across rooftops, leaping down into yards, vaulting over crates. The cat hissed and bolted into a gap under a shed. Naruto crouched low, coaxing it with soft sounds, patient despite the scratches on his forearms. A moment later, he emerged victorious, the squirming animal tucked under his arm. Mission complete. He crowed. Daichi wiped sweat from his brow, panting. How are you not tired? Naruto tilted his head, grinning. 'Cause I make it fun. That's the trick. Renji blinked, thoughtful despite himself. He treats even chores like serious training. No wonder he's so far ahead of us. The days blurred into a rhythm of small tasks. Clearing irrigation ditches. Carrying bundles for the market. Repairing fences. Menial work that drew groans from Daichi, sighs from Renji, and endless enthusiasm from Naruto. When tasked with carrying heavy crates across the village, Naruto shouldered 3 at once, running sprints instead of walking. When told to weed a field, he knelt with unshakable focus, turning it into a test of precision. When hauling water, he stacked buckets until he could barely see, grinning as he jogged in balanced strides. Why? Daichi demanded one afternoon, watching Naruto move with the energy of 3 genin combined. Why take this stuff so seriously? Nobody cares if we half-ass it. Naruto's grin softened into something steadier. Because it matters to the people who asked, and because it makes me stronger. If I don't give everything here, how can I give everything when it counts? The words landed harder than Daichi expected. He scratched at his jaw, grumbling, but offered no retort. Renji, though quiet, studied Naruto with a new kind of respect. The boy wasn't just talented, he treated everything as a chance to grow. Kakashi trailed at a distance, watching with his usual mask of indifference. To the casual eye, he looked bored. But behind his single eye, he catalogued every detail. Most children grew frustrated with D ranks, sulking or slacking. Naruto thrived on them. Where his teammates dragged their feet, he carried them with sheer energy. He didn't whine, didn't falter, he smiled. This boy is different, Kakashi thought. Most prodigies burn hot and cold, but Naruto, he burns steady. Even here, in the smallest of tasks, he grows. Kakashi's lips curved faintly under the mask, and he makes the others grow, too. The D-rank missions ended early that afternoon, but Kakashi didn't dismiss them. Instead, he led the team out to Training Ground 3, the same open field with tall trees standing like silent guardians around its edges. He stood there, hands buried in his pockets, posture slouched, eye half-lidded, but Naruto had already learned not to be fooled. D-ranks are good for patience, Kakashi said casually, but patience alone won't keep you alive outside the village. Let's test the rest of you. Daichi cracked his knuckles and grinned. Finally, something worth the headband. Renji tightened his pouch straps, his lips pressed thin. Test, meaning what exactly? Naruto tugged on his forehead protector with a grin, meaning it's about to get awesome. Kakashi's visible eye curved faintly, then he gestured toward the trees. Ambush me. Daichi didn't hesitate, crashing through the brush with a shout, kunai raised high. Kakashi flicked to the side, letting him skid past. Too loud, he murmured. Renji tried next, moving carefully, so careful it was almost painful to watch. He blended into the shadows better than Daichi, but Kakashi still appeared behind him in a blur and tapped his neck with a wooden blade. Too slow. Naruto went last. He didn't crash forward like Daichi or creep like Renji. He moved quick and low, weaving under branches, circling wide until Kakashi nearly missed him. A pebble flicked from Naruto's hand landed square at his feet. The Jonin's eye sharpened. He hadn't sensed the boy until that moment. Better. They moved on to sparring. Kakashi called them into a circle, one at a time against him until exhaustion dragged them out. Daichi went first, all force and fury. Kakashi caught his wrist, pivoted, and sent him sprawling in one smooth motion. Renji followed, his strikes careful, measured, but hesitant. 3 exchanges later, Kakashi tapped him out. Naruto stepped in last. He didn't just attack, he adapted. Each parry Kakashi gave, Naruto shifted rhythm, probing for openings. He was sharp, fast, his counters clean. Small though he was, he darted under strikes and came up grinning, sweat shining on his forehead. He lasted longer than both teammates combined, until Kakashi swept his legs and tapped his forehead protector. Dead, the Jonin said. Naruto laughed from the grass. Hey, getting closer, though. Renji and Daichi stared. Closer? The boy had lasted nearly 5 minutes. Kakashi didn't comment, but he noted the fire in Naruto's grin. Afterward, Kakashi led them to the base of a towering cedar. He pressed his palm against the bark and walked up a few steps before dropping back down. Tree climbing. Focus chakra into your feet. Too little, you'll slip. Too much, you'll crack the bark. Renji's eyes widened. That's advanced. Daichi was already sprinting. He slammed into the trunk, managed 2 steps before tumbling backward. What the? Renji tried more cautiously. He got 3, maybe 4 steps before sliding back, landing hard but upright. Naruto grinned, stepped forward, and ran. He shot halfway up the trunk, turned, and flipped down lightly. That's it? This is fun. He jogged back up again, then again, until Daichi was growling and Renji's eyes were wide. Don't worry, Naruto called from halfway up. You'll get it, just feel the chakra in your feet. Like walking, but with the ground upside down. You've gotta trust it. Renji gave it another try, focusing harder. He made it 5 steps before sliding, but there was a spark of understanding in his eyes. Daichi tried again, and again, each time slamming back down harder, until Naruto zipped down the tree and steadied him with a grin. Oi, you almost had it that time. Don't push so much chakra. Think of it like lightning, sharp and fast, not blasting everything at once. Daichi blinked. Lightning? Yeah, you don't hear it until it hits. That's how your chakra should feel. Daichi scowled, but the corner of his mouth twitched. HMPH, lightning, fine. Renji, sweating, glanced at Naruto. And I should, just trust it? Naruto nodded. Exactly. Stop doubting. Just climb. They kept at it. Renji's steps grew steadier, his confidence inching upward. Daichi still fell, but his frustration turned to determination. Naruto raced up and down the trunk like he'd been born to it, sometimes upside down, sometimes leaping from one tree to the next, laughing the whole way. Between attempts, Naruto started teaching signals. A hand tap for moving left, a whistle for regrouping, a shoulder tap for traps. Use this so we don't have to shout, he explained cheerfully. Renji raised a brow. You just made these up now? Yup, Naruto said, grinning. Makes it easier for us, right? Daichi huffed, but even he had to admit it worked. From a perch above, Kakashi watched in silence. Naruto wasn't just showing off, he was lifting the others, pulling them along. Renji's steps were steadier now. Daichi's strikes sharper. Both of them had started to listen. Most prodigies walk alone, Kakashi thought. This one makes others walk with him. By dusk, Renji had climbed halfway up, sweat dripping but pride shining in his eyes. Daichi managed 10 steps before crashing down, cursing but laughing. Naruto was still bounding up and down like it was nothing, calling encouragements at every slip. When they finally collapsed in the grass, Daichi groaned, I'm never walking again. Renji smiled faintly. That was progress. Naruto lay back, hands behind his head, staring at the sky. Told you we'd get stronger. Next time, we'll all reach the top. Daichi snorted. You're insane. But this time, his voice carried something different, respect. By the time the three of them limped back toward the village, the sky had darkened into streaks of violet and orange. Training had wrung them dry. Renji's legs trembled with every step, and Daichi kept muttering threats against the cedar tree that had bested him. Naruto, on the other hand, bounced along at their side, scratches on his arms and dirt on his clothes but grinning like he'd won a prize. Come on, Naruto said suddenly, pointing toward the lanterns glowing over the market street. We should eat. Ramen's on me. Well, actually on the Hokage's stipend, but you get what I mean. Daichi groaned. Ramen? After a day like this, I need meat. Real food. Naruto gasped, clutching his chest as if stabbed. Ramen is real food. Best food. The best food ever. Renji gave a small chuckle despite his exhaustion. I don't think I've ever met someone who believes in anything as much as you believe in ramen. Naruto puffed up. Believe it, you'll see. Ichiraku's is like training for your soul. You'll thank me. He dragged them down the street until they were seated at the narrow counter of Ichiraku's. The smell of broth and grilled pork filled the air. Naruto ordered with practiced speed, 3 miso, extra chashu, and leaned on the counter with a grin as Renji and Daichi exchanged uncertain glances. When the bowls arrived, steaming and rich, Daichi dug in first, slurping loudly. His eyes widened despite himself. Okay, this isn't bad. Naruto smirked triumphantly. Told you. Renji ate more carefully, savoring each bite, but by the time his bowl was empty, the cautious boy's shoulders had loosened, the tension drained from his face. It's comforting, he admitted softly. Naruto stretched his arms behind his head, utterly pleased. See? Team Ramen. Way better than sulking in bed after training. Daichi rolled his eyes. You're ridiculous, but there was no edge to it anymore. Afterward, they wandered through the lantern-lit streets, their pace unhurried for the first time all day. Naruto challenged Daichi to a sprint down one alley and back, and though Daichi scoffed, he still ran, and laughed breathlessly when Naruto beat him by half a step. Renji shook his head at them both, but Naruto looped an arm over his shoulders anyway, dragging him along until even he was smiling faintly. You're not used to this, huh? Naruto asked him. Renji blinked. Used to what? Someone pushing you, Naruto said simply. Someone saying you're good enough. Renji looked away, embarrassed. I don't usually hear that, no. Well, you are, Naruto said firmly. Plenty strong. You just need to stop second-guessing yourself. Renji swallowed, eyes dropping, but the faintest smile tugged at his lips. Daichi snorted from the other side. Don't fill his head too much, or he'll start thinking he can beat me. Naruto's grin turned mischievous. Maybe he will. Daichi shoved him lightly, and Naruto shoved back until they were both laughing. By the time they parted ways at the crossroads, the air between them had shifted. Renji no longer walked a step behind, and Daichi's jabs carried camaraderie rather than resentment. Naruto waved them off with a grin so wide it seemed to light the whole street. From a rooftop shadow, Kakashi watched them go, eye crinkling faintly. The day had wrung them all dry, yet Naruto still blazed with energy, pulling the others into his orbit without even trying. He reminds me of Sensei, Kakashi thought. The way Minato could make anyone believe in themselves. Naruto has it too. Maybe even more. The Jonin turned away, his gaze drifting toward the dark horizon. The team was blossoming, but storms were always waiting beyond the walls. The night was quiet over the Hokage's office, the kind of silence that came only when most of the village was asleep. The lamps burned low, their glow painting the walls in warm orange. Scrolls and reports were scattered across the desk, but Hiruzen Sarutobi had long since learned to find order in the mess. He set his pipe aside and unrolled a scroll stamped with the Fire Daimyo's seal. The neat brushstrokes spoke of diplomacy, but the weight behind them was anything but polite. The Wind Daimyo had begun diverting his contracts, patrols, escorts, bandit suppression. Where once Sanagakure's shinobi had been dispatched, now the requests were being routed to Konohagakure. On paper, it was a gesture of trust in the Leaf's reliability. In practice, it was strangulation. The Sands coffers depended on outside work. Their barren land yielded little food or trade, and the pay for missions kept their shinobi corps alive. Now, their revenue was bleeding away with every contract Konoha received. Hiruzen leaned back, exhaling slowly. The case cage won't let this continue for long. A proud village, stripped of its lifeline, would never accept humiliation quietly. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. Konoha was strong, wealthy, stable. But prosperity carried its own dangers. Sanagakure's bitterness would only grow, and when it boiled over, the first place it would spill was the Riverlands. A knock at the door drew him from his thoughts. One of his aides entered, bowing before setting down a thin stack of reports. Hiruzen waved him off and skimmed the fresh scrolls. Bandit activity along the river border. Merchants requesting escorts. Isolated thefts on the trade routes. Small issues on their own, but strung together they painted an emerging picture. Tension bleeding into the borderlands. The land of rivers, he murmured, tapping ash into the tray. Always overlooked, always the fault line. He walked to the broad window overlooking Konoha. Lanterns flickered below. Ramen stands still open for late-night customers. Children's laughter carrying faintly across the rooftops. Peaceful, for now. But the world beyond was stirring. His mind, inevitably, turned to Naruto. Kakashi's reports had grown more insistent with each passing week. The boy was blooming. Prodigious skill, monstrous stamina, but more than that, leadership. He turned two average genin into something resembling a squad. He lifted them, encouraged them, found strength in their flaws. Kakashi's phrasing stuck with him. Most prodigies are solitary blades. Naruto is a fire. He makes others burn brighter. A rare gift. Dangerous, too. Naruto's chakra was already greater than most jonin. His control was sharp, his memory precise, his optimism still unbroken by the chill of the village. And that optimism, bright, defiant, was what drew others to him. Danzo's eyes would wander there sooner or later. The elders too. And outside the walls, enemies would see more than a boy. They would see a weapon. You would be proud, Minato, Hiruzen thought. Your son carries your brilliance and Kushina's fire. And he has something more, something that is entirely his own. He sighed and returned to the desk. One report in particular caught his eye. A merchant requesting an escort through the Riverlands, close to the border with Wind. On its surface, routine. But to Hiruzen's practiced eye, it was opportunity. A low-level mission for a young squad. A chance for Naruto to stretch his wings outside the walls. And a way to remind Konoha's allies that the Leaf still kept its roads safe. He drafted the assignment carefully, his brush scratching across the parchment. Officially, it was C rank, no more than an escort for a caravan. And officially, it was another small stone dropped into an already rippling pond. When he finished, he sealed the scroll and leaned back, pipe smoke curling toward the beams overhead. Grow well, Naruto, he murmured to the empty room. Grow strong, before the world remembers you exist. Outside, the moon cast the village in silver calm. But Hiruzen's gaze drifted westward, to where the Riverlands touched the wind. He could almost feel the pressure building, a storm waiting to break. And in the middle of it, he pictured a boy's grin, bright, reckless, and burning. A torch. Brilliant. Unmissable. The morning sunlight streamed through the Hokage's office, warm against the scrolls and ink spread across the great desk. Hiruzen Sarutobi looked up as Team Kakashi filed in, 3 young genin standing before their jonin commander. Daichi crossed his arms, impatience plain in his stance. Renji was more restrained, though the tightness in his shoulders betrayed him. Naruto, by contrast, beamed as if just being summoned here was the start of an adventure. Hiruzen steepled his fingers beneath his chin. Team Kakashi, how have you found your missions thus far? Boring, Daichi said instantly, ignoring the sharp elbow Renji sent his way. We've caught cats, pulled weeds, carried crates. None of it's real shinobi work. Renji cleared his throat, trying to soften it. We've learned patience and coordination, Lord Hokage. But, I think we're ready for more. Naruto pumped a fist in the air. Yeah, give us something real. We'll nail it, believe it. Kakashi's visible eye flicked toward his students. He said nothing, But Hiruzen caught the faint twitch at the corner of his mask. Amusement, perhaps, or something deeper. The Hokage leaned back in his chair. Eagerness can be dangerous, but so can complacency. It's the duty of a shinobi to be prepared for either. He unrolled a fresh scroll and set it on the desk. The red wax seal of the mission office gleamed faintly. Very well. Your next task will be a C-rank mission. Daichi's grin split his face before he could stop it. Renji stiffened, wide-eyed. Naruto practically vibrated with energy. A merchant caravan will be departing Fire Country and traveling west, Hiruzen continued. Your assignment is to escort them through the land of rivers. Bandits have been sighted along the route, and while it is not expected to escalate beyond minor resistance, vigilance is required. Renji swallowed hard. The Riverlands? That's close to the Wind border. Correct, Hiruzen said. You will not cross into Wind territory, but proximity demands caution. The Riverlands are often overlooked, yet they sit between two great powers. Tread carefully. Daichi slapped his hands together. Finally, bandits, huh? Let me at him. Naruto turned, grinning at his teammates. We'll keep the caravan safe and show everyone what we can do, right, Renji? Renji hesitated, glancing between Naruto's determined grin and Daichi's reckless excitement. At last he nodded. We'll do our best. Kakashi spoke for the first time, his voice mild but carrying weight. Lord Hokage, is there anything we should know beyond the standard risks? Hiruzen's gaze lingered on him for a heartbeat too long. Only that the Riverlands are a place where tensions can spill across borders without warning. Keep your eyes open. Kakashi's eye narrowed slightly, but he inclined his head. Understood. The Hokage handed over the sealed mission scroll. Naruto stared at it as though it were a treasure map. Daichi looked like he was ready to burst out the door immediately. Renji clutched his pouch strap a little tighter, nerves playing on his face. Remember, Hiruzen said, his voice carrying a note of quiet steel, a shinobi's duty is not glory. It is completion. Protect the client. Return alive. Nothing more, nothing less. Naruto's grin softened, but it didn't fade. We'll bring them back safe, Lord Hokage, promise. For a moment, Hiruzen studied the boy's bright face, the grin that seemed to shine even through the seriousness of the chamber. Minato's calm resolve was there, Kushina's fierce fire too, but something else, something that belonged only to Naruto. Go, then, Hiruzen said at last, and make Konoha proud. The team bowed. Kakashi tucked the scroll into his vest, ushering them toward the door. Naruto was the last to leave, waving brightly over his shoulder before disappearing down the hall with his teammates. When the office fell silent again, Hiruzen leaned back in his chair. His eyes drifted westward, toward a border the children did not yet understand. The Riverlands, he murmured. Always the first place to tremble when the great nations shift their weight. He lit his pipe and exhaled slowly. A torch had been lit in Naruto Uzumaki, brighter than most dared imagine. The question was whether the world beyond Konoha's walls was ready for it. The next morning dawned crisp and bright, the village already stirring with market chatter and the sound of sandals on stone. Team Kakashi gathered at the south gate, packs slung over their shoulders, weapons checked and rechecked. Daichi bounced on his heels, cracking his knuckles like he was heading to a tournament. Finally, a mission worth taking. Bandits won't know what hit him. Renji tugged at his straps for the 5th time, his face drawn tight. It's still dangerous. Bandits don't fight by rules. Naruto stood between them, grinning like the whole world was opening before him. Dangerous. That's what makes it fun. We'll handle it, believe it. Renji shot him a look. You really think everything is fun? Not everything, Naruto said, tilting his head. But protecting people? Getting stronger with you guys? That's fun, and we'll do both. Daichi smirked despite himself. TCH. You're crazy, but fine. Let's make it fun. Kakashi strolled up last, a slim pack on his back, his eye curved in that faint arc that gave nothing away. Good. You're all here. Try not to die. Daichi groaned. Renji stiffened. Naruto only laughed. They stepped out through the great wooden gates, leaving the village behind. The road stretched ahead, winding westward toward the Riverlands, the air filled with the scent of grass and distant water. For Naruto, every step felt like freedom. He'd trained, he'd worked, but this was the real start. His first mission beyond Konoha's walls. The world beyond the horizon was waiting, and he was ready to meet it head-on. Renji walked a pace behind, eyes flicking to the tree line with nervous vigilance. Daichi strode forward, muttering about how many bandits he could take down before lunch. Naruto kept close between them, humming under his breath, his energy unflagging. From behind his mask, Kakashi studied them. The boys were raw, untested, still thinking of danger as something abstract. Naruto carried himself like he'd already seen it, even if he hadn't. There was no fear in him, only determination and that wild, infectious grin. The Jonin's gaze drifted toward the distant horizon. The land of rivers was no mere neutral ground. It was the border between giants, a place where tensions bled through without warning. Bandits might be the surface threat, but beneath, Kakashi could already feel the weight of something larger stirring. The Hokage's timing isn't coincidence, he thought. He wants them blooded, wants Naruto blooded. His eyes slid toward the boy again. 7 years old, and already carrying himself like a shinobi twice that age. Already inventing jutsu, leading teammates, forcing even his Jonin sensei to take him seriously. A torch, Kakashi thought. Brilliant. Dangerous. How long before every shadow out there notices? Ahead, Naruto whooped suddenly, running a few steps forward and turning back with a grin. Hurry up, slowpokes. The Riverlands aren't gonna wait for us. Daichi shouted back, sprinting to chase him. Renji sighed, shaking his head, but a faint smile touched his lips as he followed. Kakashi lingered a moment longer, watching the three of them dart down the road like sparks in the wind. His hands slid into his pockets, and he exhaled softly. Too young for this, he murmured, and yet, maybe ready all the same. The road stretched westward, toward rivers that would carry them to borders where nations trembled. The torches of 3 genin burned bright against the horizon, and Kakashi followed, silent and watchful, as the world began to shift around them. The caravan waited at the south gate like a small, lumbering beast. Wagons heavy with bolts of cloth and baskets of salted fish, oxen stamping, merchants fussing with ropes and sealing jars. Guards in plain leathers checked straps and counted heads. The air smelled of dust and river water, and under it all there was the soft metallic tang of coin and risk. Naruto's grin nearly split his face. For him, the road had always been a promise, adventure tucked between towns. Lessons hidden in passing faces. He hopped from crate to crate, testing the weight of a pack, thumping an ox with absurd familiarity as if it were an old friend. This is it, he crowed. Our first real mission. Think of all the stuff we'll see. Daichi punched the air. Finally. Bandits, real fights, not another day of sweeping mud. I'll make a pile of them and buy myself a feast. His voice was equal parts bravado and hunger. The boy wanted reputation like a prize. Renji adjusted the strap on his bag with slow hands, eyes on the horizon. He had a leaf-worn map tucked inside a notebook. Routes carefully annotated. Remember the route, he reminded in that low, careful tone he used for everything important. Keep formation and don't get reckless. Kakashi leaned against a post, mask hiding the set of his mouth, one visible eye hooded in his usual unbothered way. He watched the caravan with the same patient attention he gave a page of scrolls. Quick glances, cataloged details. To the others, he looked casual. To those who knew him, the calm meant readiness. He flicked his gaze at Naruto, then at Renji and Daichi, and the faintest crease marked his brow. Not a worry. Simply the weight of a Jonin responsible for 3 lives. Merchants bustled, thanking the leaf guards with curt nods. Many of them were veterans of routes that ran close to the wind border, and their faces carried the map of miles and mistrust. A thin man in a patched coat muttered to his partner as they loaded a crate. Heard there's been mercenary, shinobi. Along the western road. Smart folk don't travel without an escort these days. His companion spat and shrugged. Someone's getting rich off fear. Good for business for those who sell protection. A woman with a basket glanced at Naruto and then, involuntarily, at the 3 young shinobi under Kakashi's eye. Her voice dropped, not out of malice but awe. Konoha's kids are on the road. Lucky caravan. Those leaf children fight like veterans. Heard stories. Even the youngest are sharper than some Jonin I knew. Her whisper was swallowed by the bustle, but it threaded through the camp like warm light. The remark would have pleased Hiruzen, if he'd heard it. The redistribution of contracts to Konoha had been a quiet thing at first. A token trust. Then more routes, more caravans. To the leaf it looked like steady influence. To Sanagakure it was a slowly closing fist on coin and pride. No one at the gate spoke of that yet. For now, the caravan's nervousness was the only thing that showed. Naruto caught the whisper and puffed up with pride in a single breath. Did you hear that? They think we're real shinobi already. Believe it? He beamed. Renji's eyes flicked toward him, not scornful, just surprised. Daichi's grin widened into something like hunger. Kakashi's eye tracked the line of road ahead, where a ribbon of trees stitched shadows across the path. Stay sharp, he said at last, voice low enough only the 3 heard. Shinobi or not, the Riverlands have been tense. Keep formation. Watch for movement in the tree line and the ground. Don't scatter. Naruto's grin folded into a line of concentration for a moment. The thrill of the road balanced by the weight of orders. He nodded. Got it. We'll be the best escorts ever, he said, and meant it. The oxen strained. The caravan lumbered forward, leaving Konoha's wooden gate and the safe pattern of its roofs behind. The road bent and narrowed, and the landscape opened to fields and marshes where rushes trembled like seas in a breeze. Far off, the riverlands breathed. A fertile patch held between two greater powers, trade routes braided like veins. It could feed life or bleed nations, depending on what men did with the roads. Kakashi walked at the caravan's flank, quiet and watchful. Behind him, 3 young genin moved with the uneven confidence of those who had just learned to carry responsibility and had decided they liked the weight. Naruto's laugh carried ahead on the wind like a bright flare. Kakashi thought of it for a moment and allowed himself the smallest of smiles. For the moment, the road was theirs. The world beyond the trees would decide whether that statement held true. The first trouble came 2 days into the journey, where the road bent along a low ridge and the trees pressed close on either side. The caravan slowed, the oxen grumbling as if they, too, sensed something waiting in the shadows. Kakashi lifted his head a fraction, eye narrowing. The air was still, but the birds had gone silent. That was enough. On guard, he said softly. Naruto perked up immediately, bouncing onto the side of a wagon to scan the tree line. Daichi grinned, fingers already itching at the kunai on his belt. Renji's shoulders stiffened, his eyes darting nervously. The first arrow came hissing from the brush. It clattered against a wagon board, and then the woods erupted with shouting. Men poured out, rough faces under ragged helmets, spears and clubs raised. Bandits, 30 at least, and organized enough to rush the caravan in a wave instead of stumbling one by one. Merchants shrieked, scrambling to shield themselves behind wagons. The hired caravan guards planted their spears, knuckles white. Kakashi didn't move. He didn't need to. This one's yours, he said mildly, tilting his head toward his students. Daichi let out a whoop. Finally, he charged straight into the nearest knot of bandits, fist smashing into a shield so hard it splintered. The man behind it crumpled, gasping. Daichi laughed, wild and sharp, swinging again. Renji moved slower, hanging back at first until Naruto shouted, "Left flank! Support Daichi!" The words snapped him out of hesitation. He slipped in behind, kunai flashing, striking where Daichi's raw strength left openings. Naruto stayed higher, leaping along the wagon tops, watching the flow. He spotted 3 bandits circling toward the oxen, a weak point. He clapped his hands, forming 3 quick seals. Wind style. Bullet barrage. The air snapped like a whip. From Naruto's mouth spat a volley of compressed air bullets, each one cracking with the sharp speed of stone from a sling. They hammered into the dirt and the wooden barricade the bandits had shoved forward. The crude cover shattered into splinters, men stumbling back in shock as shards cut their arms and faces. Merchants gasped. Even the caravan guards froze for a heartbeat, eyes wide at the sight of a boy unleashing jutsu with killing intent. Naruto dropped lightly to the ground, grinning. "Keep them back. Renji, take the one on the left, he's reeling." Renji obeyed, darting in to slice a bandit across the arm. Daichi roared and body checked another straight into the dirt. The tide faltered. Bandits expecting easy prey found themselves driven back by 3 children who moved with sharp precision. For every wild swing Daichi made, Naruto redirected him with a shout. For every hesitation Renji showed, Naruto cut it off with quick encouragement. A spear jabbed toward Naruto's chest, too fast for Renji to intercept. Naruto twisted, caught the haft with one hand, and fired a single wind bullet from the other. The air round cracked through the wood, shattering it clean in 2. The bandit dropped what was left, eyes wide, and bolted. The others broke soon after, retreating in a scramble of curses and fear. Shouts faded into the trees until only groaning men and shattered weapons littered the road. The caravan guards stared. The merchants stared harder. Konoha's brats, one of them whispered, awe mixing with disbelief, "They fight like veterans." Naruto beamed, hands on his hips. "Told you, piece of cake." Daichi wiped his knuckles, grinning ear to ear. "Ha, I could have taken twice that many." Renji shook his head, chest heaving. "We could have been overwhelmed. They had numbers. We actually won." His voice was stunned, more to himself than anyone else. Kakashi strolled forward, as unhurried as if the skirmish had been a sparring match in the village. He nudged one of the fallen shields with his toe, eye narrowing at the iron reinforcements. "Well done," he said. The praise was quiet, but enough to make Naruto puff up, Daichi stand taller, and even Renji smile faintly. Then Kakashi's tone shifted, the lazy warmth gone. But this wasn't random. Naruto blinked. What do you mean? Kakashi crouched, examining the markings on a bandit's bracer. Not clan, not village, but uniform. Bandits don't gather this many without a leash. And they don't carry steel like this unless someone's supplying them. He rose, his gaze scanning the tree line with sharp weight, which means someone wanted us delayed, or tested. The silence after his words was heavier than the fight itself. Merchants exchanged nervous looks. Naruto's grin dimmed, but his eyes sharpened. Then we'll be ready next time. Kakashi studied him for a moment, then let his eye curve faintly. That's the right answer. The caravan began moving again, slower, more cautious. Behind them, the ridge stood littered with broken shields and scattered blood, mute testimony to Konoha's youngest proving their worth. And somewhere beyond the trees, unseen eyes watched the retreat with quiet interest. High above the ridge, where the tree line thickened and the slope dropped into shadows, a figure crouched in silence. A hood shadowed his features, but the glint of thin threads stretching from his fingers betrayed what he was. Raziman, once of Sanagakure, watched the retreating caravan with eyes that neither hurried nor flinched. His fingers twitched once, and from the brush at his side a puppet shuddered upright, a lean wooden frame, lacquered dark, its jaw snapping in a staccato rhythm. Tiny blades glimmered where fingernails should have been. He let it move a step forward, then stilled it. Not yet, not for rabble like bandits. So it's true, he murmured, voice low and dry. Even their children fight like wolves. Behind him, a heavy-set man shifted, cracking his knuckles impatiently. This was Karu, broad as an ox, his skin crisscrossed with scars. You had us waiting for that? His voice rumbled with boredom. 30 bandits, and 3 brats broke them. Let me down there, I'd split them in half before they blinked. You'd alert the copy ninja before we were ready, Raziman said evenly, not turning. Impatience is the death of puppets and men alike. Karu snorted but subsided, resting his massive fists against a tree trunk. A woman lounged on a branch above, her legs swinging lazily. She had sharp eyes and sharper teeth when she smiled, and her voice curled with mockery. Children with teeth. That blonde one's dangerous. I could feel his chakra even from here. Too bright for a boy his age. Her name was Yura, and she spun illusions like silk, slow, clinging, suffocating. Raziman's lips curved slightly, not a smile but something colder. Yes. The boy is sharp. The others are raw, but he pulls them like strings. His eyes flicked to the distant silver-haired figure walking among the wagons. And then there's Hitaki. They sent the copy ninja to guard merchants. Interesting. Yura gave a soft laugh. That's more than merchants, then. That's a message. Konoha wants the Riverlands to know they're watching. Raziman finally straightened, brushing dust from his cloak. The puppet at his side folded neatly, joints locking with a dry click. Exactly. And we are the reply. Bandits cannot break the leaf's image, we can. Karu grinned, baring his teeth. Good, about time I crushed something worth hitting. Yura's voice was almost sing-song. And if Hitaki kills us? You've seen his record, he's no ordinary Jonin. Raziman's eyes narrowed, but his tone remained calm. I don't need to kill him. I need to make the Riverlands bleed. To show the world that Konoha's reach isn't unchallenged. If that means stalling Hitaki while you break his children and burn his caravan, so be it. His fingers flexed, chakra threads glimmering faintly in the dim light. 2 more shapes stirred in the brush behind him. His favored puppets, each wrapped in cloth to hide their edges. One had a shield of lacquered wood, the other long, gleaming needles folded in its wrists. The world must see, Raziman murmured, almost to himself. The leaf's pride is not invulnerable. Even wolves can be trapped. Karu cracked his neck. Yura's grin widened. Shall we? She asked. Raziman let his gaze linger once more on the distant flash of blonde hair darting beside the wagons. The boy's laugh, faint even from this distance, carried like a spark across the field. In time, he said. Patience, strings must be pulled at the right moment. The puppet's jaws clicked softly, an echo of his words, as the caravan disappeared down the road. The caravan rolled on, the dust of the bandit skirmish still clinging to wheels and boots. The merchant's tension hadn't vanished, but it had softened. They looked at the 3 genin differently now. Less like children tagging along under a Jonin's shadow, more like small, sharp blades carried in plain sight. Naruto basked in it. He walked beside one wagon, chatting with a broad-faced merchant about oxen as if the man hadn't nearly been skewered hours before. He bounced between wagons, poking at bundles, making jokes until even the most sour-faced guard chuckled despite himself. When one old woman fretted about broken crates, Naruto hoisted the splintered wood with ease and set it aside. "Don't worry, Granny, nothing's getting past us." The woman laughed, a nervous sound that slowly turned genuine. "Spirited one, aren't you? Like a spark in kindling." Daichi strutted nearby, basking in the echoes of praise. "You should have seen me. 10 of those bandits fell before I even broke a sweat." He flexed his arm, smirking at anyone who would glance his way. "Next time they'll run before I even swing." Renji frowned at him, scribbling notes into a little book as he walked. "There weren't 10. 4, maybe 5, and you left your side open twice." "TCH. They still fell," Daichi shot back. "They fell because Naruto told me where to cover you," Renji said evenly, not lifting his eyes from his notes. Daichi scowled, ready to retort, but Naruto skipped in between them, grinning. Hey, doesn't matter who did what. We worked together, and we won. That's the point. Teamwork, remember?" Renji shut his notebook, but a small smile tugged at his lips. Daichi grumbled, though the sharp edge of his pride softened. The merchants watched all of it, whispering to each other when they thought the shinobi weren't listening. "Leaf trains them young," one said. "Not just to fight, but to move together." Another nodded, eyes wide. "Even their children, stronger than full-grown men elsewhere." Naruto caught the whispers and puffed his chest out like a rooster. He liked it, sure, but more than that, he liked the way the others looked lighter, less afraid. That mattered more. At the edge of the convoy, Kakashi walked in silence. His posture hadn't changed, shoulders slouched, book still tucked into his vest, but his gaze never left the tree line. He noticed every shadow, every flicker of branch, every rustle too heavy for wind. The faintest brush of foreign chakra tickled at the edge of his senses, thin and careful. It disappeared before he could trace it. Threads, Kakashi thought, his single eye narrowing. Puppeteer. He said nothing to the team yet. No sense rattling them until the strings pulled tight. But he filed the sensation away, storing it beside the quiet he'd noticed earlier, the kind of quiet where birds fled and the air held its breath. Naruto dropped back beside him after a while, head tilted. "You've been watching the trees a lot, Kakashi-sensei." Kakashi gave him a sidelong glance. "That's where danger lives." Naruto nodded, serious for once. "Want me to keep watch too?" The Jonin studied him for a moment. The boy's grin was gone, replaced by the sharp brightness he'd shown in the fight. It was a look that belonged on a seasoned shinobi, not a child. But here it was, steady and sure. "Do that," Kakashi said at last. Naruto grinned again, but this time it was quieter, tempered. He dropped back to his teammates, scanning the tree line with fresh eyes. The road stretched westward, the riverlands unfolding in fertile fields and low marshes. Farmers bent over rice paddies, their lives carried on as if nothing lurked beyond the horizon. But for Kakashi, the weight of the unseen pressed harder with every step. Something was watching. Something patient, and when it came, he knew it wouldn't be bandits. The caravan reached the low pass by late afternoon, the sun hanging heavy and red behind them. Trees pressed in close on both sides, and the road narrowed to a ribbon barely wide enough for 2 wagons abreast. The air grew cooler here, shadows stretching long. Kakashi's stride slowed. His visible eye sharpened. The faint brush of chakra threads had been growing thicker, closer, impossible to ignore now. "Stay sharp," he murmured. Naruto caught the shift immediately, hand tightening at his side. Daichi glanced over with a frown. Renji stiffened. The merchants, sensing tension, grew quiet, their voices swallowed by the hush of the woods. The first strike came as a tremor. A pulse ran underfoot, and the lead ox bawled as the road caved in. Dirt collapsed with a roar, the front wagon dropping nose first into a shallow pit. The caravan screeched to a halt. Then the trees stirred. Not with men, not with bandits, but with the sound of clicking wood. Figures stepped from the shadows, not flesh, not breathing. Puppets. 3 of them, lacquered dark, their faces carved into hollow sneers. Blades gleamed where fingers should be. One raised its arm and a volley of poisoned senbon spat out, thudding into a wagon side. The merchants screamed. And then, at the rear, a cloaked figure stepped into view. His hands flicked lazily, threads glimmering in the fading light. The puppets jerked forward in perfect unison. "Puppeteer," Kakashi said flatly. Raziman's voice carried over the chaos, calm and dry. "So the Leaf sends the copy ninja to guard merchants. Interesting. But this road doesn't belong to you." Kakashi moved instantly, kunai flashing to slice through a thread aimed at a merchant's throat. His Sharingan whirled, tracking the lines too fine for normal eyes. He lunged forward, intercepting the first puppet with a sharp kick, sending it skidding back in a shower of dirt. "Protect the caravan," Kakashi ordered, voice low but sharp, "I'll handle the puppeteer." Naruto nodded before the words were finished. "You heard him, Daichi, Renji, form up." From the left flank, the taijutsu brute barreled in, massive arms swinging. His first blow crumpled a wagon's side like paper. Oxen bawled, trying to bolt. Renji froze for half a heartbeat before Naruto barked, "Renji, right side, cut him off." The boy snapped forward, kunai flashing. Daichi roared, charging the brute head-on. Their fists collided with a sound like stone cracking. Daichi staggered, teeth gritted, but held the line. Above them, Yura, the kunoichi, landed lightly on a wagon. Her eyes glowed faintly as she traced signs in the air. "Sleep," she purred. Illusion spilled out like smoke. Renji's eyes glazed, but Naruto shoved him hard, breaking his line of sight. "Stay with me, Renji," he snapped. Renji blinked, shook his head, and forced himself back to focus. All around, puppets clattered and merchants cowered. Kakashi clashed with one, his kunai slicing threads as fast as they appeared. He lunged toward Raziman, but the man kept his distance, drawing him away with each flick of his fingers. "You're fast, Hitaki," Raziman said, his voice never rising. "But you're bound by duty. Protect them all. Let's see how long you can dance." Kakashi's eye narrowed. He could win, he would win, but the puppeteer's tactic was clear. Drown him in distractions, force him to split his blade between the puppets and the team he guarded. Every step closer to Raziman cost him ground somewhere else. Naruto planted himself in front of a wagon, 3 seals flashing through his fingers. Wind style, bullet barrage. Compressed air bullets ripped through the air, hammering into the brute's chest and forcing him back a step. The man snarled, blood speckling his lips, but charged again. Daichi intercepted with a heavy punch, Naruto firing over his shoulder to push the man off balance. Renji darted in low, slashing at exposed legs. It was chaotic, messy, but it was teamwork. Yura hissed, her illusions flickering uselessly against Naruto's raw, focused chakra. "That boy," she muttered. "He burns too bright." Naruto grinned fiercely, sweat dripping, eyes alight. "We're not bandits. You're not getting past us." The brute swung again, and Naruto sidestepped, firing 3 wind bullets in a tight cluster. They struck his shoulder, punching clean through flesh. The man staggered, roaring. Daichi slammed a fist into his gut, and Renji's kunai found his throat. The brute fell, heavy as stone. For a heartbeat, silence. Even the merchants stared. A child's jutsu had just gutted a shinobi who could have torn through the caravan alone. Naruto exhaled hard, chest heaving, then straightened, grin still there, one down. From his vantage, Raziman's expression darkened. He tugged his strings, and the remaining puppets surged forward, faster, sharper, their jaws clicking in unison. "You'll regret that, boy," he called, voice still calm but edged now. Kakashi cut one puppet down with a swift strike, wood splintering, poison hissing. His Sharingan whirled as he pressed forward, but Raziman shifted back, still playing distance, still forcing Kakashi to split his focus. "He's not my equal," Kakashi thought, parrying a blade arm, but with those children in the mix, he's dangerous enough. Naruto, for his part, didn't flinch. He stood firm, Renji at his side, Daichi panting but grinning, the 3 of them shoulder to shoulder in front of terrified merchants. The storm had broken, and they were in the heart of it. Naruto tasted the dust and iron in the air and grinned like a dog given a run. The brute was down, heavy on the dirt, and for a sliver of time the road seemed to catch its breath. But the puppets did not pause. Their lacquered limbs turned with that soundless precision only wood and wire could produce, and their blades flicked out again toward the wagons and the still shaking merchants. Kakashi was locked in a blade dance with Raziman, kunai flashing as he sliced through threads and severed puppet limbs. But the puppeteer kept his distance, hands moving like a conductor and letting others do the dirty work. That tactic bought him time, and time was what Raziman was after. Naruto stepped in where Kakashi could not. He barked orders clear and precise, each one a small command that tightened the team's movement into a net. "Daichi, push the left flank now. Use your weight to pin the puppet's torso. Renji, circle and try to chop the thread near its shoulder." His voice cut above the metallic clicks. It carried the kind of authority that didn't expect echo. Both boys moved as if a string pulled them. Daichi collided with a puppet like a battering ram, body slamming against lacquer with a howl. The puppet staggered but kept striking. Its hands were blades. Its foot swung to take down a wagon. Naruto darted forward, seals snapping. Ram, tiger, dog. 3 quick motions practiced until they were muscle and breath. Futon. Sabama Ryuden. The air screamed. Invisible slugs of compressed wind hammered into the puppet's chest. The wooden torso splintered inward, gears and small mechanisms disgorging with a shriek of metal. The puppet folded like a marionette with its strings cut. Merchants cried out in a half-sob, half-cheer. "Bless the leaf children." Someone breathed. The caravan guards looked as if they had seen ghosts. Naruto didn't pause to soak the praise. He sprinted between carts, using thrown kunai and pressure to shepherd terrified people behind an improvised line. Renji, eyes burning with a new kind of resolve, had found the thread Naruto indicated and cut it. The puppet's hands clattered uselessly to the dirt. Daichi, chest heaving, roared as he shoved another attacker aside. But the Genjutsu Kunoichi was patient. Yura had stayed off the field, perched like a viper, and now her illusions pooled like oil in the air. Renji blinked, pupils dilating as the world smeared. He froze, lips whispering in a language of sleep. His body crumpled where he stood. Naruto saw the change like lightning. He had felt the shift in Renji's eyes, the slackening of his breath. Without thinking, he lunged, grabbing Renji and slamming his shoulder into the boy hard. The physical shock was enough to break the first layer of smoke. But Yura's art was sticky, not broken by a shove alone. Naruto swung, lashes of wind snatching at the edges of the illusion, cutting at the way it clung to Renji's mind. "Wake up, Renji. Focus on my voice. Count with me," Naruto shouted, voice steady, and began a cadence. 1, 2, 3. He repeated it until Renji's eyelids fluttered and his breath returned. The genjutsu cracked like ice underfoot. Yura hissed, eyes narrowing. "You break so easily, boy." She danced down from the wagon, eyes glittering. "Little leaf can blunt the edge of my technique. How quaint." Naruto wiped grime from his lip and stared straight at her. "You shouldn't underestimate people who keep getting up," he said simply. Raziman's attention snapped back like a whip at that exchange. He saw the puppets fall and one subordinate dead. His plan was fraying. He tugged threads harder, and the remaining automatons lunged with renewed brutality. Kakashi seized the moment and surged, blade a blur as he cut through another puppet and closed the distance to the puppeteer. For an instant the two men were only motion. One the precision blade, the other the puppeteer's patient choreography. They tested each other's limits, and Kakashi's eye flared with the quiet, unyielding knowledge of a seasoned warrior. But Kakashi's balancing act was still the reality. He could duel Raziman and cut down puppets, but he could not be in 12 places at once. That hollowed the fight into something gnawing and dangerous. Naruto understood something else then, a truth that had nothing to do with age and everything to do with duty. This was what being a shinobi meant. It was not show, not glory. It was the hard measurement of whether you could stand where people needed you to stand. He planted his feet and moved with calm speed, calling the team into tighter formations, redirecting falling wood, pointing merchants to gaps in the defense. Where Renji's precision was needed, he sent him. Where Daichi's brute force should drive back a puppet, he shoved him forward. Every command was tiny, exact, and the three of them responded like cogs in a well-oiled machine. A remaining puppet lunged for Kakashi, aiming to peel him off the leader. Naruto reacted first. He fired a single, thin wind bullet that rattled the puppet's jaw mechanism, making it miss by a hair. Kakashi's blade finished the job. The tide, slow and bloody, began to lean. The caravan, though scared and shaken, was intact. The merchants clutched their goods with white-knuckled hands, staring at the three genin with something that smelled like reverence. Raziman's eyes were flat as river stones. He had misjudged the magnitude of the leaf's smallest spark. He looked at Kakashi, saw the unreadable calm, and then at Naruto, and something like calculation moved behind his gaze. "Interesting," he muttered, not without respect. "So the leaf breeds teeth in its pups." Kakashi didn't answer. He moved, blade carving decisive arcs, and the remaining puppets fell like woodcut soldiers. The road was bloodied and torn, but their duty held. Naruto panted, chest heaving, grinned back at the edges of his mouth. For the merchants, for his teammates, for Kakashi, Naruto had been more than a prodigy. He had been the heart of a defense. Beyond the trees, unseen at first, the sun dipped low. The battle had been won, for now. But the road ahead was not only long, it was watched. The road was chaos made still. The brute's body lay cooling in the dust. Splinters from shattered puppets littered the ground. The merchants clung to their wagons, eyes wide, mouths shut tight as if even breath might invite death back into the clearing. Naruto stood at the center of it, chest rising and falling, sweat plastering his hair to his forehead. Renji hovered near him, blade trembling but held tight. Daichi leaned on his knees, grinning even through his ragged breaths. Kakashi had Raziman measured at last. One puppet was destroyed, threads severed, The Genjutsu Kunoichi forced back. The fight should have been over. But the puppeteer's expression never broke. His cloak rippled as he stepped back into the tree line, hands flicking in motions so fine they barely disturbed the air. Thin glimmers of chakra threads sang in the twilight. Something heavy stirred behind him. The forest shook as a larger shape stepped into view, taller than a man, broad as two, lacquered black from crown to heel. Its mask-like face bore no features save a row of needle slits where the mouth should be. Every movement groaned with hidden mechanics, the faint hiss of poison vials and blade sheaths whispering beneath the surface. The merchants gasped. Renji's lips parted in disbelief. Daichi muttered a curse under his breath. Kakashi's eye narrowed. That's not a standard puppet. That's a killing machine. High-level work, years in the making. Rosamund's voice drifted across the field, cold and measured. The brute was for breaking walls. The woman was for bending minds. But this one, he lifted his hands, threads sparking faintly as they locked into the great puppet's frame. This one was made for nothing but killing shinobi. The puppet's arms extended. Blades whispered free, curving like scythes. A compartment slid open across its chest, revealing a line of tiny holes, ready for senbon, or worse. Show me, Leaf, Rosamund called, voice sharpening at last, something fierce beneath the calm. Show me if even your children can stand against this. Kakashi swore under his breath. He was already moving, kunai in hand, ready to intercept before the monster could cut loose. But Naruto stepped forward first. He wiped his arm across his forehead, straightened his back, and grinned. Not the wild, careless grin of before, but something fiercer, steadier. His fingers flashed through seals, faster than Renji or Daichi could follow. You want to test us? Naruto shouted, his voice cutting across the clearing. Fine, then you'll see what the Leaf's youngest can do. The puppet's jaw clicked open with a dry snap. Poison mist began to coil in its throat. Kakashi's eye widened. He pushed forward, Sharingan spinning, but Naruto's seals were already finished, chakra flooding the air in sharp, focused waves. Wind gathered around him, whipping dust into spirals. The merchants cowered. Renji and Daichi stared. Rosamund narrowed his eyes, tugging his threads taut. And Naruto, grin unbroken, drew in a sharp breath as his chest swelled with chakra. The clearing trembled, and the clash to come hung like lightning about to strike. Thanks for watching.